Okay, so we now start a discussion of a new topic, that is the doctor-patient relationship. And doctor-patient relationship is very key to our discussion of healthcare law and ethics. Now, if you take other professions, okay, let's take a lawyers. Lawyers have clients. If a client goes in for a lawyer and then he's not satisfied with the work which the lawyer has done, he can fire the lawyer, right? Or he can get a new lawyer and go and do appeal to the Court of Appeal or to the Supreme Court, as the case may be. That is fine. However, in the case of a doctor, if he makes one mistake, there is anger between the patient or the patient family and then the doctor, as it were. And I've given you some illustration from the literature. So therefore, what is expected of doctors? Now, if you take a document we call the Good Medical Practice, which is a regular publication by the British Medical, by the General Medical Council, not the British Medical Association. The GMC is equivalent of what we have, the Medical and Dental Council in Ghana. So every year, they publish this work, Good Medical Practice, which is supposed to be a systematic collection of ethical precepts that should guide doctors as they go about their profession. And so if you look at the 2006 edition, for example, paragraph 21 has stated what doctors need to do in order to fulfill their role in doctor-patient relationship. And I want to start with that before we get into the details of our discussion. Now, doctors must A, be polite, considerate, and honest. B, treat patient with dignity. C, treat each patient as an individual. And D, respect patient's privacy and right to confidentiality. E, support patients in caring for themselves to improve and maintain their health. F, encourage patients who have knowledge about their condition to use this when they are making decisions about their care. So these are some of the things which doctors are supposed to do in order to live up to their obligation or their role in a doctor-patient relationship. I don't know if you heard of Harold Shipman. Have you heard of Harold Shipman before? There's this doctor in the UK who was said to have killed a lot of his patients. Then I think there are more than 100 and so on. So later on, when inquiry was done, it was exposed that this doctor has actually killed a lot of his patients, and we can say that deliberately, so to speak. So that tells you how medicine, which is supposed to be for good of patient, may also be abused by some professionals. And you also have doctors who take advantage of vulnerability of their patients and try to display sexualized behavior towards their patients. And that is also unacceptable. So then, we ask a question, what are the goals of medicine? Is medicine supposed to achieve a certain goals so that in talking about doctor-patient relationship, we'll be able to evaluate whether it is achieving the goals of medicine or not. Well, if we look at what we know from the literature, the traditional goals of medicine are saving and extending of life, promotion and maintenance of health, the relief of pain and suffering, and then the relief of pain and suffering. That is, there are some situations that you cannot get a cure, right, for the patient, but you can minimize the pain, what you call the palliative care. We have like the palliative care where the patients cannot really recover and come back to life, but he or she is also in excruciating pain, and you want to help minimize that before the patient will die. So these are seen as some of the traditional goals of medicine. But if you look at the World Health Organization, one of the bodies established under the auspices of the United Nations Organization as part of the post-Second World War rebuilding effort. The World Health Organization, of course, on the globe, that is the highest body in terms of making authoritative pronouncement on matters of health. And if you look at the constitution of the World Health Organization, WHO, they define health as follows, quote, the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, unquote. Now, this is important because this definition of health as being not the absence of disease or infirmity, but more of the complete physical, mental, and social well-being is very important in trying to understand the nature of the doctor-patient relationship. Yeah, so in view of what we have quoted from the World Health Organization Constitution, we could say that the contemporary goals of medicine are the prevention of disease and injury, and promotion and maintenance of health, the relief of pain and suffering caused by maladies, the care and cure of those with the malady, and then the care of those who cannot be cured, the avoidance of premature death, and then the pursuit of a peaceful death. Premature death is one that occurs before the person had opportunity to experience. I mean, we don't need to explain it. We all know what it is, isn't it? Except that Callahan has given us a definition. But any death before you are expected death from a natural cause, you having experienced the full cycle of life, is a premature death. And medicine is supposed to help people to avoid that. Now, if you look at the British Medical Association, one of the oldest well-organized medical associations in the world, they also have a statement from their documents relevant to understanding what the aim of medicine is. And this is what they have in their constitution, quote, for many patients with serious condition, there comes a stage where no more can be done to save or prolong life. And the aim of medicine shifts from curative treatment to keeping the patient comfortable and free from pain. So they continue. The aim of medicine is not and should not be to avoid death as long as possible, but to recognize and accept what is inevitable and to make the dying process as positive as possible for all concerned. What is that? I'm teaching. Me from back why? We try there online, right? Yeah. So then, the goals of medicine, according to Ghana Medical Association, our own local version of the British Medical Association, according to Ghana Medical Association, what I got from their website is that health is a right and must be made accessible, equitable, affordable and appropriate, and safe at all times to all the people in Ghana. And then they will add that so I mean, that is the essential aspect, but they emphasize promotion of optimal health for the people of Ghana. So optimal health, what is it? Is it to help people to be healthy as long as it's possible by available resources, available set of medical knowledge, and so on. But you can go to the Ghana Medical Association website and look more at this. Now we come to the essential question: what is the nature of the doctor-patient relationship? What I call the healthcare professional-patient relationship. The reason for preferring the healthcare professional is that when we are discussing healthcare law, medical law, and ethics, it's not only about doctors, okay? And you appreciate that it's not only about doctors, but all other professionals within the clinical setting. So allied health professionals are included. Those in the laboratories are included. The nurses and midwives are included. The pharmacists are included, and all that. Well, scholars have attempted to explain the doctor-patient relationship using various models. So we look at some of the models. So some scholars will say that the doctor-patient relationship is can be explained by the fiduciary or the trustee model. And by this model, the point being made is that the patient is said to have placed his or her body and health in trust with the physician, okay? And the physician become like, if you like, the trustee, for the body and health of the patient. And for that matter, the physician as a trustee is expected to work in the best interest of the patient, just as in a normal trust. If you remember your equity and succession, trustee is supposed to work in the best interest of the beneficiaries in respect of the subject matter over which he is a trustee. Now, in that regard, the trustee is supposed to consider the wishes of the patient, but ultimately, he has responsibility for making the decision. It's not the patient who has the ultimate responsibility, but the doctor as a trustee, because he is supposed to have the best interest of the patient at heart, as it were. But this model of doctor-patient relationship, I think, work meaningfully when you are applying it to incompetent patient. If you say incompetent patient, that is a patient who cannot give like a proper consent, a valid consent. So typically, like mental health patients, or maybe children who have not attained the status they can give consent regarding proposed treatment or procedure. So those type of patients, you can actually use what you call the trustee model or the fiduciary model of a doctor-patient relationship. Then the doctor-patient relationship may also be explained using the Priestley model. So the Priestley model here sees the doctor as, if you like, being in the position of a father, like a paternal, someone who is supposed to act for the benefit of the patient and then avoid harm, right? Act for the benefit of the patient and then avoid harm as the case may be. So just as priests or pastors are supposed to do for their religious followers. So the same thing is expected of like the doctor within that priestly model. And well, if you look at that model, it gives the doctor so much power at the expense of the patients, because the focus is on the medical needs of the patient and not other ethical requirements like the respect for autonomy and then truth-telling and so on. No, those are not really important. What is important is that what the doctor is doing, is it improving the health situation of the patient? If that is so, other things are not important. Then we also have the engineering model. So the engineering model here, just try to use the analogy of if you like a vehicle or a machine. So the patient is saying like a machine. So just as the machine malfunctions, you take it to the mechanic or the engineer, and then it is fixed. So the same thing applies to the patient, who is more or less like a machine. So when you are sick, just like how the machine has malfunction. So just as if you take your vehicle to the mechanic is just supposed to work on it and then fix the problem. So you, the patient too, you have to leave everything entirely to the you have to leave everything to the engineer. Those engineer will make the if you like, the diagnosis, and then just like you take your car to the mechanic will tell you, okay, this and this and this and this are not working. That is the problem. So this is what we need to do. Then you decide, okay, go ahead and do it. So the same way, you, the patient, you go to the doctor, and then the doctor will make the diagnosis, and then you will tell the doctor whether he should go ahead and treat you or not to treat you. So that's like the engineering model. And the doctor really doesn't care about whatever led you to reach your decision, as it were. Well, another model for explicating a doctor-patient relationship is the customer sales person model. Like we know from marketing, customer salesperson. So here, we say that the customer is always right. And that is to say that the doctor is supposed to be patient and address all questions which the patient may bring, even if the questions sound silly or something like that. The customer is always what? Right? And the doctor is just supposed to serve the interests of the patient, as it were. Now, another model is what we call the collegial or the partnership model. So here, the doctor and the patient are seen as partners. They have a common objective, and that objective is to improve the health of the patient. So the patient is supposed to cooperate with the doctor, and then the doctor is also supposed to cooperate with the patient so that they achieve the common objective. And the common objective is to improve the health of the patient. So that is the collegial or the partnership model, as it were. Then we also have the contractual model. So by the contractual model, the doctor-patient relationship is purely a matter of contract, right? So they negotiate, the doctor has his obligation, the patient has his obligation, and that's how a normal contract works. That is how it is also supposed to work as it were. Good. So these are some of the ways in which the doctor-patient relationship is explained using those models. But regardless of how you explain it in terms of the model, there are certain core elements which apply within the doctor-patient relationship. And some of these core elements may have probably some parallel relationships in society, but we're going to concentrate on the core elements at the bottom of a doctor-patient relationship before we leave. So first, the principle of non-maleficence. What is it? Non-maleficence simply means obligation not to cause harm. Okay, obligation not to cause harm. So it's a negative obligation. Negative obligation in the sense that you are not supposed to do anything which will cause harm. So you don't have to do it. Avoid it so that you don't cause harm, meaning that that which you are avoiding, if you did it, that will cause harm. So you have a negative obligation not to do it. But there are times that non-maleficence may also conflict with another precept or another principle, what we call beneficence. Beneficence simply means doing good. Now, with respect to the doing good, sometimes, like I made the example of the laparoscopy from our last class, that you are doing exploratory investigation. You don't have any particular problem. You immediately know about the patient. So you just keep looking in the patient. And the patient has just, let's say, consented to a particular thing, but you see a tumor or you see something, some other serious problem. You don't have the consent of the patient. Can you go ahead and solve it? So beneficence will say that go ahead, isn't it, and solve it. But if you go ahead to, you're also offending another principle we call like autonomy. That is, the individual has the right to decide whether to consent to a proposed treatment or not consent to a proposed treatment. So the point is that there may be conflict between some of these principles at some times, as it were. Or even when it comes to even surgery generally, you are cutting, right? So you are causing harm, isn't it? You are causing harm. So non-maleficence will say that don't do it, don't cut. But you are not just cutting, you are cutting to go and solve a problem. So beneficence will say that you should beneficence will say that you should go ahead and then and cut as it were. So sometimes you may need to do a balancing act. So let's look at like the scenario of a man who has got a gangrenous leg, right? His leg has developed a gangrene. Surgical amputation offers a good chance, although not 100% of survival, but there's that certainty that the man will lose the affected limb if you are to do a surgery. Now, medical treatment with antibiotics offers a much lower chance for survival, let's say 15 to 20%. So if you decide not to do the amputation, there's a 15 to 20% chance that the person will survive this gangrenous leg condition. But the man retain his leg and will not be disabled. But let's look at it. There's only 15 to 20%, meaning that there's 80% chance that you will not survive. You will actually die, and so on. Okay. Now, the first one, where you do a surgery, you will survive. If not 100%, certainly close to 100% that you survive. But what we know is that you survive and you become disabled because your leg is going to be amputated, okay? Now, in a scenario like this, the patient is the only person who can ultimately provide a value rating for such a disabled life, what will allow a proper balancing judgment to be made against the risk of death. So you cannot decide. If you decide not to do like the surgery and you just give antibiotics, there's a, let's say, maximum of 20% chance that the patient will not die, will survive the gangrenous leg, and will not be disabled because you have the leg there. But 20% compared to 100 is relatively small, isn't it? So it means that there's 80% chance of the patient not surviving the gangrenous leg. Maybe if you are just looking at it at the surface, you say that, oh, then let's amputate the patient's leg so that the patient will not die, and then the patient will just be disabled. But the patient is the best person to determine whether he or she would like to remain alive as a disabled person, as it were. So the healthcare professional, your only duty is to assist the patient to make a decision. But you cannot make that decision for him because, as we have indicated, the patient is an autonomous person. There's a topic which I usually treat to explain autonomy and all that before we discuss the doctor-patient relationship. But because of time, we are just putting everything together. And that is why I keep explaining and explaining. Yeah, so the point to note is that the non-maleficence, which is avoid harm, the harm is not only limited to medical harm, but also other harms, maybe from psychological distress to breach of trust by the medical profession. You are supposed to avoid all these forms of harm. But there's another challenge. That is the psychological harm. When it comes to diagnosis, okay, there are some patients who will not like to hear or know about their condition. And if they get to know about their condition, it will worsen their situation. But medical ethics says that you should tell the truth. So tell the patient what the situation really is. But here is the case. You know your patient is faint-hearted. And if he or she gets to know certain diagnosis, he or she is going to get worse off. Now, this is where the law says that there is what we call therapeutic privilege, okay? So if you know the situation of your patient as he or she not having the strength to be able to receive or manage certain information, then you are permitted by law to withhold that information from that patient. And you are withholding it for the good of the patient. So you are withholding it as part of beneficence, because you don't want to psychologically harm the patient. You can read the article by D.K. Score, Truth Telling the Doctor-Patient Relationship, published in the Clinical Ethics. I know you have access to the HANE online. Do you have access? Hello?
My Lord, yes, we were introduced to, but they didn't give us the password as to how we can access.
No. So if you go to the library, we have what they call the this library, what is Toto Electronic Library. I think they have the computers there, you can access it. And the librarian can also give you the the password and all that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about beneficence now. So beneficence, which is the opposite of not opposite, related to non-maleficence. So beneficence here says that do good for the patient, work for the welfare of the patient, right? And it owes its origin to the Hippocratic oath, as well as the Good Samaritan Christianity. Remember the Good Samaritan Christianity? Jesus told the parable that a man was in his way to Jericho. He was attacked by robbers, left in a pool of blood. A priest was passing by, he walked away. Another person, Pharisee, passing by, walked away. Then there was this a good person from Samaria who was on his horse. He felt pity for this man in the pool of blood, went to him, nursed his wounds, put him on the horse, and took him to the town and gave him to the innkeeper. And then Jesus said that he is a good word, a good neighbor, so good Samaritan. So the beneficence can be likened to the Hippocratic oath, can be likened to the Good Samaritan ethics. It can be likened to the noblest oblate ethic of the Order of Knights Hospitallers of the Crusades. So beneficence principle is the moral duty to act for the benefit of others. So here, there's a positive obligation, unlike the maleficence, which is a negative obligation. Maleficence does not require you to do anything, but rather requires you to refrain from causing harm. But beneficence requires you to do something. So that is, there's a positive obligation, which beneficence actually impose on you. Of course, all healthcare professionals have the duty of beneficence. So if you're a surgeon, you're expected to carry out the most appropriate operation for the patient, rather than doing an alternative that the patient will prefer. So beneficence actually go with what we call paternalism, okay? Paternalism. Paternalism in the sense that the doctor is expected to act for the good of the patient. Just as fathers, pater is a Latin word for father, are supposed to do good for their children. So paternalism. But of course, doing good for the patient does not mean that if you're a doctor and the patient needs a kidney, you should go and give one of your kidneys to the patient. No. that is not what it means. So if you look at the work by Beauchamp and Childress, right, in their principle of medicine, they have suggested a number of moral rules underscored by the principle of beneficence. And these include protect and defend the rights of others, prevent harm from occurring to others, remove conditions that will cause harm to others, help persons with disabilities, and rescue persons in danger. But the problem about beneficence is that it has an implication for the principle of autonomy, right? No, autonomy simply means that the person, being an adult, being a rational person, is entitled to make determination, to make decision regarding what shall be done to his person or not, and so on and so forth. And he must give his consent in all situations. So that is an important aspect of what autonomy. But beneficence says that the healthcare professional should do that which will be of benefit to the patient according to the judgment of the professional. So what that means is that the patient is not required to participate in the decision making, and it is rather the healthcare professional who will have to make like the decision as whether something is for the good of the patient or not. So therefore, the professional is entitled to override the non-autonomous choice by an autonomous individual, because the assumption is that the individual probably does not have the ability to understand all the intricacies of the technical information before he or she will be able to make a decision and all that. But the question is this: in terms of deciding what is for the benefit of the patient and for which reason the healthcare professional must act, is it objectively or subjectively determined? Now, if subjectively determined, should the patient or the healthcare professional determine what is a benefit? Is it the patient who's supposed to determine what is a benefit, or the healthcare professional? Just like the example that we saw above, the gangrenous leg, using, having amputation and then having antibiotics. You have antibiotics, there's a up to 20% chance you survive, but then your leg will be intact. If we do the amputation, we have close to 100% chance that you survive, but you're going to be a disabled person. So who decide as to which of these two options is for the benefit of the patient? Is it the patient or is the healthcare professional? Well, traditionally, it is the physician or the healthcare professional who decides. But in modern times, that approach is seen as paternalistic. That is to say that the patient is being treated like a child who does not appreciate complex things which are good for him or her. So the parents must decide, and that is rejected by modern society, that paternalistic medicine should give way, and there should be respect for the patient's autonomy. Well, another challenge for beneficence is what we call the justice. The healthcare professional owes an obligation of beneficence to all his patients, okay? However, he owes obligation to all his patients, but it may be unjust in some situation to provide the best treatment to one patient if it is so expensive that it uses up resource without to have benefited other patients. Last time we had a class, I talked about the malaria example. Let's say that one cancer treatment can provide malaria treatment for, let's say, about 5,000 patients. Now, the treatment is available for this cancer patient, but what that means is that 5,000 malaria patients are going to be deprived treatment. So you see the challenge here. Beneficence will require that the doctor will have to treat the cancer patient for him or her to get the best of treatment and get well. But then justice also requires that will deprive 5,000 malaria patients treatment. So we see how it can be very challenging. Now we come to the autonomy itself. As I said, autonomy simply the idea that the patient, autonomy from the Greek word auto and the nomy. So that is self-govern, like you are governing yourself. So you're exercising the right to self-determination, as it were. So you determine what should happen to your body or what should not happen to your body, as it were. So freedom of choice. And in talking about autonomy, we must also remember what J.S. Mill talked about, what we call the Mill's harm principle. That is to say that as an individual, okay, you have the liberty, you have the autonomy to do everything so long as you don't cause harm to another person. So that is what we call the Mill's harm principle. So your autonomy actually ends at where it's going to cause harm to another person. If no harm will be occasioned, then as autonomous person, you have the liberty, you have the freedom to act. So you have a negative duty of non-interference with another's autonomy. And that is why in everyday language, we say that your freedom ends at another person's nose, if you've heard that before. That is, literally to say that, yes, you have the autonomy, but your autonomy should not amount to you violating another person's autonomy, as it were. So let's keep that in mind. Yeah, so with respect to autonomy, Beecham and Childress have also developed some specific rules, right, which emanate from that ethical duty. And these include telling the truth. Every person should be told the truth so that he or she can decide what should happen or what should not happen regarding him or her. And then respect the individual's privacy. Protect confidence. And again, ensure that consent is obtained for medical intervention. Because the patient has autonomy, because the patient exercises the right to self-determination, right? Then you must ensure that the patient has given his or her consent before you actually carry out any medical procedure or intervention. And then, of course, autonomy also requires that when you are asked, you help others to make a decision as it were. Okay, we've also talked about like the justice. So justice here, we are thinking of giving priority to investigation and treatment of patients on basis of clinical need. when such decisions are within your power. And justice within the healthcare setting become very important because of finite resources, because of limited resources, as we have seen. So you need to be making a decision every now and again as to whether you're acting justly or not in the clinical setting. Now, the doctor-patient relationship is a relationship of trust, no doubt about that. But oftentimes, this trust is abused, and it now raises the question as to whether doctors have an ethical duty to also trust their patients. Of course, the doctor-patient relationship works both ways. The patient should trust the doctor should also trust the patient. That is to say that you as a patient, the information that you are giving the doctor about yourself should be honest information. You are the best person who knows your own medical history, okay? So if you go to consultation room for the first time and you are not honest about your history, you are not honest about what your past has been regarding your health, you are not actually helping the doctor to provide the best of care for you. And that is why, if you look at the patient charter, which we'll be looking at, if you look at the patient charter per section 167 of the Public Health Act, you notice that one of the duties of the patient is also to provide accurate information about their conditions to the doctor. I mean, that notwithstanding, we come back to the issue of the imbalance of power, okay, between a doctor and patient. And as you noted from our first class, Ian Kennedy actually observed that when we take the doctor and patient, the doctor is in the powerful position compared to the doctor for obvious reason. And Kennedy, in the Maxim of Medicine, chapter 1, will use the example of illness, right? And makes the argument that a judgment made by those with power to make such judgment, that is the doctors, that illness is a spurious scientific term, and the doctor, in purporting to determine its existence as an objective fact, is engaged in a series of moral, social, and political choices which we permit him to make. So, re-emphasizing the fact that, yes, doctors are be given more power. To start with, they have the technical knowledge. And unfortunately, they often add some other things to the power which the technical knowledge give them. And that is where Kennedy had the worry that matters which are not purely technical in terms of medical knowledge, but which rather require some social decision makings and all that should not be actually determined by doctors. Okay, so I will end the class here. We'll continue another time, but you have the material, so read it.